21,000 years ago, the Wisconsin Glacier covers all of northern New Jersey with its southern terminus at Perth Amboy. Sediments brought by this glacier include rich clay deposits, as seen in this 1823 watercolor of Perth Amboy. The town is situated on a bluff, made from a light-colored blue-gray clay subsoil, which is cut by the Raritan River and the Arthur Kill waterways. During the 18th and early 19th centuries, this rich clay is used to make fine pottery and bricks. By 1854, the Eagleswood community is established in the western section of Perth Amboy, and the rich clay is excavated for use at the Eagleswood Art Pottery run by Edward Spring and his friend James Taylor. Taylor eventually becomes known as the father of the American terracotta industry. Terracotta is an ancient term, loosely translated to mean burnt earth or baked earth. During this time, few places offer instruction in artistic terracotta. Within the Eagleswood Art Pottery, Edward Spring instructs people on how to create sculptures and plaques, such as this one. At Eagleswood, Edward Chemies, along with his wife Flora, work sculptures in plaster or clay. Some are cast in bronze, others are made from terracotta. Chemies contracts with local Perth Amboy brick factories to produce his terracotta creations, which quickly attract the admiration of art critics. Generally considered America's first animalier, Chemies is the last great Eagleswood artist. Alfred Hall has a well-known brick factory in Perth Amboy with a fine waterfront location on the Arthur Kill off Buckingham Avenue. Hall is already a very successful brickmaker and respected businessman. In 1873, at his nephew William's suggestion, Hall repurposes part of his brick plant to make ornamental as well as plain terracotta blocks. Hall names this new business the Perth Amboy Terracotta Company. Due to the demand for terracotta, more kilns were added, with 20 visible in this old photo. Architectural terracotta production comes naturally to Hall and his staff, as they are already experienced in manufacturing and design.
This new terracotta industry, of which I am the founder, brings into the state about $300,000 per year, and will soon bring in more than $1 million per annum, and eventually bring in more wealth than all the crockery business in Trenton. Alfred Hall, Perth Amboy, 1884.
Terracotta kilns are fired by coal, which is mined in Pennsylvania. Railroads extend their tracks directly into Perth Amboy factories, so coal can be constantly supplied. By 1876, the Lehigh Valley Railroad makes Perth Amboy its East Coast shipping port for the export of coal. Large coal docks are built along the Arthur Kill in the area now known as Harbor Town. Main railroad tracks are laid down directly to this location. Perth Amboy now has all the imported fuel needed for the present factories, including those businesses yet to come. And with an almost endless supply of coal, the major industrialization of Perth Amboy begins. Alfred Hall is elected mayor of Perth Amboy. At City Hall, plans are made for the development of commercial factories, including such improvements as roads for teamsters, docks for ships, and easements for trains. As Hall had predicted, his terracotta industry continues to grow. Demand for artistic and architectural terracotta increases. Despite his success, Alfred Hall leaves the Perth Amboy Terracotta Company in 1881, following a dispute with his co-owners. He forms the Alfred Hall Terracotta Company with a location directly across the street from his original factory. 1 year prior to Hall's exit and formation of the Alfred Hall Terracotta Company, he hires a well-seasoned, classically trained sculptor as the new chief designer. That man is Domingo Mora. An artistic edge is brought to the Perth Amboy factory, which Hall appears to later transfer into his new venture. Mora's designs flow with a certain grace. Angels, children, and artistic plants are all incorporated into Mora's imaginative designs. Other companies followed the lead of Alfred Hall and set up in and around Perth Amboy. Noteworthy names include Henry Moorer, the New Jersey, the Standard, and the Excelsior Terracotta companies. These factories own and excavate numerous clay pits in Perth Amboy, Woodbridge, and throughout Middlesex County. Deep holes are dug into the subsoil via standard strip mining procedures. Different qualities of clay are separated in the pits and then shipped to the factories for processing. The key is starting with the fine clay, which Perth Amboy and the surrounding areas have in abundance. At the factory, the harvested clay is allowed to dry out, which causes a chemical reaction that will make the clay much more pliable. Impurities are removed by washing the clay. In a pug mill, the clay is mixed with a grog powder and water to make it soft and left to age for several months. The next step involves a keen artistic skill which takes place in the modeling shop. Here, craftsmen shape the clay to a preconceived graceful form using simple hand tools. When an architect desires a repetitive design, molds are made from the modeling shop's original sculpture. Into the molds, clay is pounded and then further compressed via vices. Once partially dry, the molds are removed, and any imperfection in the greenware is shaved off by hand. Glazing is applied directly onto the unfired greenware by spraying or brushing. If applied properly, the glaze makes the terracotta impervious to nature's elements. The greenware is carefully stacked in brick kilns. The doors are shut. Iron braces firmly hold the brick kiln together. Coal is shoveled into the fire, which reaches over 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit. The clay particles literally flow and melt together, forming a solid mass. This firing process takes 10 days, starting with a slow and steady increase in heat over a 72-hour period before reaching full temperature. There are 3 days at 2,000 degrees, and then it is slowly reduced for another 4 days to prevent cracks in the terracotta. Downtown Perth Amboy enjoys many artistic terracotta works. Over 110 years ago, this is the High Street location of the Garretson Funeral Home. White glazed terracotta is used here. Other terracotta glazes can be used to simulate marble, limestone, or granite. Transport to High Street from the terracotta factory was less than 2 miles, arriving from the New Jersey Terracotta Company based on Catherine Street off Hall Avenue. This elegant facade is also used in the New Jersey Terracotta Company's advertising brochure. George Washington dries in a factory modeling shop before going through the terracotta glazing and firing process. This statue, dating to 1896, is the work of Perth Amboy sculptor Nels Alling. At this time, many Danes managed the 4 main Perth Amboy terracotta factories. The Danish people commission and present the Washington sculpture to the city of Perth Amboy as a gift. To this very day, Washington offers a commanding view over High Street from City Hall Park. Prior to the end of the 19th century, multiple glazes could not be applied to architectural terracotta without a second firing, which was time-consuming and expensive. However, in 1894, the Perth Amboy Terracotta Company develops a new method, allowing many different colors to be applied before the firing process. This new method requires only 1 firing. Noted architect Sanford White embraces polychrome terracotta, visits the Perth Amboy Terracotta Factory, and orders special clay bodies for several of his forthcoming buildings. Seen here is a fine example of polychrome. Rising stories above Smith Street, the goddess Diana enjoys a bird's eye view. She is dressed in flowing robes, balancing on a globe with a torch in one hand and in the other a staff of two entwined serpents, as used by Hermes in Greek mythology. Originally, a Montgomery Ward department store occupies this site with this terracotta plaque as its symbol. Here, the goddess image is entitled the Spirit of Progress, mounted alongside other great pieces of design polychrome terracotta. Selling terracotta is not a simple order-taking proposition. When a factory sells architectural terracotta, they are selling a product that they do not have. And as with most orders, they are selling something they have never sold before. Every job is uniquely made to order. As demand for decorative and architectural terracotta grows, additional entrepreneurs build smaller factories, effectively adding to the increasing competition. In 1906, several terracotta companies merged as a means to reduce costs and increase prominence in the marketplace. The Perth Amboy Terracotta Company, the Excelsior, the Standard, and the Atlantic all combine under the name of the Atlantic Terracotta Company. These factories play an important part in the lives of the people they employ, as well as those who live in the larger community.
Those were good times. We were clannish, happy, and had good pay. There was no commuting. After work, you could go fishing, lobstering, or drink a beer in a nice hotel, not in a saloon as one does now. Percy Okeson, Chief Draftsman, Atlantic Terracotta Company.
On Smith Street, decorative terracotta commands the facades of many storefronts. Both Art Nouveau and Art Deco styles are seen here. Winged griffins flank a cherub plaque near this building's roofline. The griffin design dates back thousands of years and appears this time on Old Smith Street in rich polychrome. Many factory workers are also volunteer firemen. This is the McClellan Firehouse on State Street. During this time period, new firehouses are built with terracotta decorations. These firehouses not only serve as a place for equipment, but also as a political and social center for the respective neighborhoods. And what better way to highlight their civic pride than by the use of Perth Amboy terracotta? By the end of the 19th century, Perth Amboy is booming. The town is a center for the production of terracotta with a resulting prosperous downtown business district. From just under 5,000 people in 1880, the town more than triples its population to over 17,000 by the end of the century. Waves of Eastern European immigrants supply the labor needed by the growing Perth Amboy factories. Prior to the Civil War, the Perth Amboy Business District ended at the Five Corners area. However, by 1896, the Five Corners becomes the center, with continuing expansion in all directions. The Perth Amboy Water Street Bluff once exhibited rich clay deposits, but by the end of the 19th century, the bluff displays lawns with elegant homes, and many of these homes are built by industrialists that make their fortunes from that same common clay. At this place, the Raritan River and the Arthur Kill meet to form an estuary, the Raritan Bay, renowned for its oysters, as well as for its use by yachtsmen. Stepping off of a horse-drawn carriage is made easier by the means of a carriage block. Typically, such blocks are made from stone and placed near the edge of a street in line with the front door of a home. Mounting a horse or exiting a buggy is made easier and safer via such a step. This block is not made from stone, but from Perth Amboy Terracotta. It is one solid piece with mold marks obvious on the hollow side. And despite being hollow, this carriage block is very heavy. Many of these blocks have the owner's name carved on the top, with Ciani on this one, perhaps belonging to the late 19th century sculptor Vittorio Ciani. Serving the growing terracotta industry are Perth Amboy's waterways, with an easy access to the Atlantic Ocean and also to Manhattan. Perth Amboy's proximity to New York City proves to be a boon to the factories making terracotta. Starting at the Arthur Kill, barges filled with terracotta make a 25-mile trip up to the Manhattan docks. Filmed from a moving boat, we see the Hudson River shoreline and the piers of Lower Manhattan as it appears in 1903. The Lehigh Valley Railroad piers are visible. We see the beginnings of the New York City skyline. Throughout this time, the New York skyline is, in part, being reshaped with Perth Amboy terracotta.
The New York skyline, which without exaggeration is the most wonderful building district in the world, is more than half architectural terracotta. New York Times, May 14, 1911.
Notable in Manhattan's skyline is the Woolworth Building. Five-and-dime store multi-millionaire Frank Woolworth hires noted architect Cass Gilbert to design the new structure, which will become the tallest building in the world at the time. The setting for skyscrapers takes place a few decades prior, when New York City building codes are changed to allow steel skeleton construction. A steel frame is set in place and then covered with a curtain wall. That wall consists of panels extending from girder to girder, and terracotta makes a fine curtain wall. Initially, Frank Woolworth wants his skyscraper covered in granite, while Gilbert wants to use limestone. The final decision, based on aesthetic and functional concerns, is to use terracotta. Terracotta is fireproof and will work well as ornamentation. The terracotta blocks and sculptures are hung directly over Gilbert's steel frame design. Gilbert hires the Atlantic Terracotta Company. Tons of terracotta are transported to Lower Manhattan from Perth Amboy via the Arthur Kill trains and teamsters. During construction, Gilbert puts the Atlantic Terracotta team in an office adjacent to his own. This gives Gilbert easy access to Atlantic's design drafts. Atlantic Terracotta uses 5 different shades of off-white glaze and several subtle polychrome colors over the exterior.
We have endeavored to express the plan and to so design it that it will be frankly a masonry and terracotta covering of a steel frame, instead of pretending to be a masonry building. Cass Gilbert, Woolworth Building Architect, 1912.
In addition to this building's stunning terracotta exterior, the Woolworth Building has luxurious interior, including a cathedral-like lobby topped off with tall barrel-vaulted ceilings. Figures representing Gilbert, Frank Woolworth, and others are seen at the ceiling's cornice line. Throughout the lobby, artistic works and sculptures appear. The Woolworth skyscraper remains as the Atlantic Terracotta Company's greatest achievement. When completed in 1912, the President of the United States officially turns on the first lights.
President Woodrow Wilson pushed a button in Washington last night. A bell tinkled in the engineers' quarters far below the street level in the Woolworth Building, and thousands of lights flashed out. To signal New York's newest heaven-kissing tower was opened formally for service. New York Sun newspaper, April 24, 1913.
Erected by 1881, the Brooklyn Historical Society headquarters enjoys exceptional terracotta. Made by the Perth Amboy Terracotta Company, Viking and Native American heads flank the entrance. Over a century later, both sculpted and molded pieces still exhibit fine detail, testifying to the durability of architectural terracotta. Designed by George Post, a highly respected architect, these figures took several months of work, being worked out directly in clay at the Perth Amboy modeling shop. From Manhattan to Brooklyn to Coney Island, Perth Amboy's clay works appear everywhere. Restaurants on the boardwalk like Childs use marine images. Here, a colonial ship is in full sail on the high seas, encircled by lobsters, crabs, and eels, all crafted at Atlantic terracotta. Not only does Perth Amboy Terracotta appear above ground, but it is also seen below. At the old Fulton Street subway station are terracotta plaques. A 17th century ship docks in New York Harbor. Steamships and ocean liners exhibit the golden age of maritime travel. These Atlantic terracotta murals are salvaged from the McAlpin Hotel and then repurposed for the subway. One of several Perth Amboy angels overlook Greenwich Village from a Bleecker Street rooftop eave. Extensive undercutting, done by hand, creates deep shadows within this sculpture. Completed by 1899 at the Perth Amboy Terracotta Company, this angel is on the New York and National Register of Historic Sites and was restored 20 years ago. And this angel is not alone, as the Greenwich Village Society for Historic Preservation keeps watch over its architectural wonders. On this Buckingham Avenue waterfront site, Alfred Hall's Perth Amboy Terracotta Company ships his products up the Arthur Kill to Manhattan. At one time, docks exist here, right next to the factory kilns.
Early riser in the ancient village of Tottenville, Staten Island, glancing across the narrow Arthur Kill, shall see on a misty morning the white low-lying sea fog pierced by singular yet picturesque forms. They are truncated cones of brick with lighter bands running around them. They stand near the water's edge and might readily be taken for something from a foreign land. Charles Decay, Harper's Weekly, 1895.
Here, rejected terracotta heads are used for bulkhead riprap. If the final product had any defect, Alfred Hall or his team would discard it. For many years, these large heads are visible along the Arthur Kill. They are now gone, perhaps repurposed for use elsewhere. While no Perth Amboy terracotta factory survives, the stately mansion of Alfred Hall does. In a day and time when industrialists lived near their factories, Alfred Hall was no exception. His kilns were located 1 block behind his home. Today, it is used by St. Stephen's Church. And reminders of Hall's creations, as well as those from other plants, are all over his hometown.
The largest terracotta works in this country are located at Perth Amboy in New Jersey. Woodbridge and Perth Amboy both owe their prosperity to the manufacture of terracotta, fire brick, and tiles. And the traveler journeying westward in New Jersey from either of these thrifty towns will find his way skirted by frequent hollows and excavations stretching irregularly on either hand. This section should become to us what the Staffordshire district is to England. Charles Thomas Davis, A Practical Treatise on the Manufacture of Brick, Tiles, and Terracotta, 1884.
Besides examples in Manhattan or locally, Perth Amboy terracotta is seen around the country, with many examples in Washington, D.C. and Philadelphia. Here, at the Philadelphia Museum of Art, a pediment from the Atlantic Terracotta Company shines on brightly. The central figure is Zeus, with Aphrodite on his right, along with other gods from Greek mythology. When completed in 1932, the Perth Amboy factory is so proud of its work that the company opens its doors to visitors. Thousands of people flock to see the 70-foot-long milestone of polychrome terracotta. The stock market crash of 1929, with its resulting Great Depression, hit the terracotta industry hard. Skyscraper construction slows down to a halt, and terracotta artwork becomes an unjustifiable cost. However, by 1935, the United States government forms the Works Progress Administration, commonly known as the WPA. This new program not only employs common labor, but also hires artists and craftsmen, including those that work in terracotta. Sculptor Waylon Gregory sets up a workshop at the Atlantic Terracotta Company in Perth Amboy. Within a few years, Gregory receives a WPA commission to create a large sculpture entitled Light Dispelling Darkness. At first meant to honor Thomas Edison, Gregory works his creation into something more. Gregory envisions a heroic theme: enlightenment, education, and science dispel disease, evil, greed, and materialism. Light Dispelling Darkness is made as a 40-foot water fountain. Its central pillar depicts images of technology, knowledge, and industry that support a globe of the Earth. Several arches radiate from the central pillar. At the end of each arch are polychrome terracotta figures. Each figure represents the horrors of society, with each evil being cast out from the earth. Here, Gregory's team crafts the Trojan soldier on horseback. The soldier wears a World War I gas mask and carries a battle shield with a skull carved in its center. Famine is depicted as a female corpse carrying the scales of justice. Her eyes are cut deep, and she rides a maroon-colored horse. With a hand on its forehead, Pestilence is glazed in blue with festering yellow sores, ready to introduce disease to the world. Materialism has 5 different grotesque heads on a red body covered in numerous disease-filled lumps. With a cobalt blue cape flying in the wind, Death is grinning while riding his horse. A lightning bolt appears to highlight the speed of the demise he brings. Completed in 1937 and installed within a year, this sculpture still exists within Roosevelt Park in Edison, New Jersey. Modern restoration efforts have not brought this artwork back to its original glory. However, despite modern shortcomings, it still remains a most intriguing work. Light Dispelling Darkness is the only surviving outdoor sculpture from the New Jersey branch of the WPA. This is one of the last hurrahs for the Atlantic Terracotta Company, which shuts down operations by closing its last factory, that is, the Perth Amboy one in 1943. While Atlantic Terracotta does not survive World War II, Federal Seaboard Terracotta does. Located on Catherine Street off Hall Avenue, Federal Seaboard will fire kilns for 2 more decades. Like Atlantic, Federal Seaboard is a merger of other terracotta corporations. Back in 1928, 3 companies come together: the Federal Terracotta Company of Woodbridge, the South Amboy Terracotta Company, and the New Jersey Terracotta Company of Perth Amboy. Lasting up until 1968, Federal Seaboard specializes in a type of flat terracotta called wall ashlar. Ashlar is very light with great strength. It can be structurally bonded or just used as a veneer, available in all glazed or unglazed colors. Federal Seaboard also produces artistic pieces as well as emblems. The use of architectural terracotta declines as the demand dwindles. Architects turned to new modern aesthetics, with terracotta being perceived as an old-fashioned material.
The dream of the modern architect is to build houses entirely out of metal, glass, and cement. In this construction, brick, tile, or terracotta has no place. Eckhart V. Eskison, President, Federal Seaboard Terracotta Company.
Following the demise of Federal Seaboard in 1968, terracotta production ceases, not only in Perth Amboy, but also in the Garden State. Federal Seaboard is the last New Jersey terracotta factory. Over these many years, brick kilns, modeling shops, and the factories themselves have been torn down. Research reveals that many of the written records are also lost. All this is frustrating to historians. However, we do have the final terracotta products decorating our buildings, with many exhibiting a beautiful artistic edge. Originating from a day and age long gone, these terracotta works in part define our heritage, as well as add a visible splendor. And this evidence is readily seen from the streets of Manhattan to the avenues of Perth Amboy.